Thank you for tuning in. The purpose of this video is to assist you with completing the cyber application. However, before we dive into the application, I'd like to start with a brief introduction about TMHCC. I'll also briefly discuss the current cyber landscape and do a quick review of the High Limits program available to you, and then we'll go through the High Limits application questions. I'm happy to announce that we celebrated our 50th anniversary this year. We have grown our global business to over 4,000 employees worldwide, and our gross written premium is at $7.2 billion. But more importantly, we are rated A++ superior by AM Best, A+ by Standard & Poor's, and AA- are very strong by Fitch Rating. So we continue to have a very strong and stable financial ratings. CPLG, or Cyber and Professional Lines Group, is a division of TMHCC. We provide insurance solutions including cyber and tech, med defense, professional liability, and reinsurance and programs, and have over 300 employees in the US under this division. We have over 20 years experience underwriting cyber, and our claims department handle over 2,200 claims per year, and I have no doubt we will reach over 3,000 claims this year. So our claims department is definitely staying busy, and our long experience continue to make us be a national leader in providing cyber insurance. Cyber landscape. Sorry about that. So as far as cyber claims trends are concerned, we are still seeing the occasional lost laptops or employee errors, such as employees sharing confidential information, be it through social media networks, or even inadvertently sending private information to the wrong recipients or giving access to the wrong people. There are numerous potential causes for our cyber breach, but the top cyber trends that we're seeing are ransomware and business email compromise. So ransomware, I'm sure most, if not all of you, are familiar with ransomware by now, especially with all the media coverage involving ransomware. But just to clarify, ransomware is a type of cyber attack which involves bad actors encrypting data files and systems through malicious software and requiring businesses to pay a ransom to regain access. We're seeing claims of ransom demands upwards of 6 figures and even a number of claims in the 7 and 8 figures. There's also a risk associated ransom infection that could make it even more expensive. Cyber criminals are no longer satisfied just encrypting their victims' data and demanding payment for a decryption key. Now there's the risk of double extortion, where the threat actors download copies of insured's files and threaten to leak confidential data unless a double ransom is paid. This means then that as the cost of these cyber attacks are going up, it's harder for victims of ransomware attacks to recover from ransomware losses. BEC, or business email compromises, is a cyber attack involving phishing, hacking, spoofing, or impersonating of a business email address. It's a sophisticated fraud scheme where criminals or scammers impersonate a business contact to trick you or an employee or customer or vendor into transferring money or sensitive information like passwords to the criminals. And cyber criminals have made millions with business email phishing scams. Another notable trend that we're seeing is increasing sophistications of phishing attacks or ransomware attacks against third-party vendors, also known as supply chain attacks. So rather than attack a single organization, criminals attack a vendor that supports many other companies. Example of third-party vendor breaches that we've seen, which impacted a number of our insureds, includes Blackbaud, the Move It breach, Change Healthcare breach, to name a few that was hit, which affected thousands of companies. Now, high limits have been requested a lot, and we've seen a huge increase of interest with purchasing high limits because an applicant may have seen numerous claims on the media, or because they have contractual obligation to carry high limits of cyber coverage. And we have partnered with Florida Lawyers Mutual Insurance Company to make higher limits available to you. The standard program limit what's commonly purchased is 1 million, but we have seen an uptick of requests for even higher limit options, which we can offer. Rating is based on the total revenues of the law firm. The higher limits available to you is very competitive because a discount is applied due to the embedded $50,000 offering through Florida Lawyers Mutual Insurance. And since there's an embedded cyber coverage, there's a zero deductible for the insurance agreements offered on the embedded and a $2,500 deductible for the rest of the components. The high limits is obviously subject to review and approval of an application and underwriting scans because we are taking on more risk. But a huge benefit to insurers because there is also a seamless claims handling when transitioning from the embedded coverage to the high limits policy. So now let's look at the cyber application. The application questions we feel are important to help prevent some of the problematic claims, such as ransomware, phishing, or email fraud, and other cyber exposures. And if you have basic controls in place, it could mean you are mitigating your cyber exposures, and the application and underwriting process will even be easier to help avoid any back and forth or even being declined for coverage. Now, if the applicant doesn't have good controls, it sometimes is reflected with when they don't know what controls are in place, then there's a great deal of exposure associated with that. And the unfortunate fact is that the claims costs and expenses is much higher than any additional premium that we can even debit or obtain if they don't have certain important security controls in place. So let's review the application. So with any insurance policies, we need to know who the named insured will be and the applicant's information. We also need the company's website because as part of the underwriting process, TMHCC conducts non-intrusive scans of your internet-facing systems, applications for common vulnerabilities to detect open and potential unsecured ports, outdated softwares, malwares from over 100 databases. And these scans do not involve any penetration of an insured's firewall, and it's actually achievable through the use of an insured's domain or URL. So be advised, though, that the information we receive as a result of these scans may change the terms being offered. We also need a description of operations to make sure the class of business fits in the program. Obviously, if there are subsidiaries, which is highlighted here, we want to know details about the total exposure of the risk. Therefore, the application should be completed based on information of all entities and subsidiaries that are seeking coverage. We want to confirm the applicant is insured and has the LPL through Florida Mutual's mutual insurance company and what that LPL policy number is. This is a way for us to confirm the applicant can qualify for the high limits program. So question number 2 is involving revenues. So rating is based on the total revenues of the law firm. So we need the current fiscal year and projected revenues in order to provide terms. Question number 3 is records. Do you collect and store, host, process, and control any sensitive information, either paper or electronic? So number 3, records, asks for the number of records you collect and store. This includes electronic as well as paper records. Because the cost of a breach correlates to the number of records, so if hackers and criminals get access to the client data, then we may need to notify all affected individuals and also provide credit monitoring. So the more records obviously means higher breach response costs. And if you don't have the exact number of records, a rounded estimate is fine. The question goes on to explain what is considered private or sensitive information, which includes social security numbers or government ID numbers, credit card information, driver's license numbers, financial account numbers, and so forth. So basically, any type of information that if that record is stolen, it could be used to commit identity fraud. And then IT department, I'm sorry, question number 3B is asked about biometrics. Biometrics is basically information or characteristic that can be used to uniquely identify a person. Examples of biometric identifiers include fingerprints, voice prints, facial scans, DNA, or other biological characteristics which are listed on this question. Um, we want to make sure that you are compliant with the protection, the use, and handling or destruction of biometric information. If not, these claims can be very expensive because it's not like a stolen credit card, right? You can simply ask for replacement of a credit card. We can't do that with fingerprints and facial scans. Question number 4, IT department. So this section should basically be completed by the person or team or resource responsible for your network security. This section is meant to confirm 2 things. 1, you have an IT person or team or resource dedicated to maintaining your network security. And 2, this person would also be confirming the accuracy of the requested information on the application regarding cybersecurity controls. So they should actually, if you have any questions as far as how to complete it, they should be completing the information because it is there's some technical questions on the applications. We see IT being outsourced, especially with small entities, and that's completely okay. We used to require that they sign and the section, but that's something we can waive now because the context could change. And this was also missed a lot, and we found that it was holding up the underlying process. So this won't hold up the application from getting terms and moving forward. Question number 5, which is a very important section, is the ransomware controls. So this covers more technical sections regarding ransomware controls. So these are essentially risk management controls and tips to help mitigate ransomware claims. Clients, in fact, have said that the application has been helpful in making them realize what cybersecurity measures they should be taking. So the question number A, do you pre-screen emails for potentially malicious attachments and links? Who doesn't get any spam emails, right? I'm sure you can imagine how many more emails would be in your inbox. So email filtering is the process of filtering a company's inbound and outbound email traffic. And inbound email filtering scans messages addressed to users and proactively blocks spam emails and viruses and other threats that try to enter the system and can be classified into your junk emails or different categories. So if you don't have email filtering, it will increase the chances of employees clicking on bad or virus infected emails. Question number B and C, can users access email through web application or non-corporate device? If yes, do they enforce MFA or multi-factor authentication? And do you allow remote access to your network? Questions B and C addresses whether the applicant has multi-factor authentication protection for web and network applications. MFA is very important because it adds another layer of protection to password protected remote access to your network. The vast majority of successful hacking or ransomware attacks are a result of the hacker gaining access to a company's network using compromised login credentials. So even if the hacker has stolen an employee's login credentials, the multi-factor authentication should prevent them from accessing your network, since they would also need to have the employee's cell phone, which could be used as the second authentication factor. Multi-factor authentication is probably the primary control that we continue to preach over and over again because it does have the best bang for your buck. In fact, one of our IT forensic experts that we work with found that of the incidents that had successful intrusions and ransomware deployments, 89% of those organizations did not use MFA. So MFA continues to be one of the biggest controls that we harp on. Question number D. Do you use next generation antivirus or NGAV product to protect all endpoints across your enterprise? NGAV is a software that uses predictive analytics driven by machine learning and artificial intelligence and combines with threat intelligence to detect and prevent malware attacks. So identifying malicious behavior and they respond to new and emerging threats that previously went undetected. So for purposes of completing this application, NGAV refers to antivirus protection that focuses, again, on detecting and preventing malware. And the question is, do you have an NGAV? And we would need to know the name of the provider for the NGAV, as well as, of course, the multi-factor authentications. EDR, also known as Endpoint Detection and Response, centrally collects and analyzes comprehensive endpoint data across your entire organization and provides a full picture of potential threats. So criminals are always finding ways to infect computers, right? And the traditional antivirus protects against a subset of malware. And EDR and NGAV is basically an antivirus on steroids, where EDR collects and analyzes EDR and endpoint data across your entire organization, and it basically protects you, and as well as NGAV to protect you from all types of attacks, because it's using AI, artificial intelligence, behavioral detection, machine learning algorithms for better protection against more sophisticated attacks and even new or zero-day attacks. So question number F, do you use MFA to protect all local and remote access to privileged user accounts? It's important to ensure that only authorized personnel have access to your privileged accounts, and that only the right people basically has control and access to your systems with sensitive data. This could be, for instance, IT department as well as HR or accounting departments. The reason is that IT administrators need elevated privileges to, maybe install your systems and hardwares, or even reset passwords for your employees and access, they have access to sensitive data. For instance, HR accounting has access to salary information. And, for IT, they can make changes in the IT infrastructure systems and so forth. So that's also important to make sure that is MFA protected. Question number G, do you have a data backup solution that has all the following characteristics? Having safe and protective backups can be another effective strategy to reduce ransomware damages and business interruption. If you get infected with a ransomware virus, you may not need to pay the ransom to get back up and running. And backups should be protected by multi-factor authentication and segregated. Data should be backed up daily. Because what happens if you lose a project that you're working on? Can you imagine if you lost all your weeks or even a month's worth of work? And it's very important that your backups are tested and can be used and relied on to restore, your network functions in case of widespread malware or ransomware, if there's a ransomware attack. Because here's some questions to consider. If you have a breach, will you be able to sustain business organizations without access to certain data, and for how long? And have you tested this? So these questions should be asked so you are prepared in the event you lose immediate access to records and systems. Phishing controls. Do you know anyone who's been scammed into sending and wiring monies to a criminal? So phishing is where criminals pretend to be a trustworthy person or company, and they lure employees by tricking them into voluntarily giving private and sensitive information or even sending money. And the bait usually comes in the form of an email. So for risk management best practices and to underwrite a client's potential exposures, we want to make sure that employees complete social engineering trainings, especially the employees that have financial and wiring responsibilities. See, we want to know the extent of their training and that has been implemented. Just a quick, easy, very easy risk management tip to avoid social engineering and financial claims. When you receive a request to transfer funds, and if there's an email that their bank information changed, which should be a red flag, by the way, pick up the phone and make sure the wire transfer request is valid. Or if they're not available by phone, send a separate email to confirm that the wire transfer request is valid. I think the quick phone call or one email to verify is worth saving thousands or millions of dollars, and you work too hard to send the money to fund a criminal. Lost history questions. So obviously we're going to ask about claims questions. The question goes on to specific incidents that would potentially give rise to a cyber claim on Section B. Or actually, it's here business connection as far as whether there's been any claims. So we want to know in the past year, has the applicant or any other person or organization proposes insurance had any cyber claims activities? So we just want to know what the claims are. They can either complete a claim supplemental form and provide details about the incidents. So the details we're looking for includes the date of the claim, the allegations or description of the incident, the applicant's response to the allegations of the claim, the number of records that were affected, the total expenses paid, including legal fees, forensic costs, and even extortion monies, if any was paid, and very importantly, any remedial steps implemented to avoid a reoccurrence of the claim. And then, of course, the end of the application asks for the certificate and signature section requests the applicant to attest to the fact that all information is complete and correct. And the application must be signed and dated at least 45 days for new business from the effective date by an officer, an owner or president or C-class, which is the CEOs and COOs. Also, we can only accept wet signatures or electronically signed with a copy of the audit trail. So that concludes the application training. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me or even contact Florida Mutuals for any questions, and they will forward all your questions to my attention. Thank you for your time.